So the astrology of the week of 1st November 2021 through 7 November 2021, it's the final moments of the air sign activation we've had over the last few weeks, with Venus in Sagittarius being ruled by Jupiter in Aquarius, and those trines from Libra and Aquarius. All of that air optimism now shifts this week, and we move even deeper into Mars-Saturn heavy skies and the Mars-Saturn dominance that will define the next 6 weeks. So let's get into the charts. Let's dive into the week. My name's S.J. Anderson. I'm an astrologer. I release weekly videos on YouTube about the astrology of the week, occasionally other videos on different topics. And it's just great to be here with you. It's great to be in another week of life and another week of astrology, even though things are quite dynamic right now, maybe intensely difficult or intensely felt with so much Mars-Saturn. I think it's always good to express that gratitude and optimism. That's sort of a theme of the video, and the theme of this week, I think, is just noting the things that we are happy about. So just to say in this video what I'll do first, one, we're going to look at the planetary aspects, sign changes and retrogrades, the stations of planets, either retrograde or direct. That's number one. Number two, I'm going to look at the moon. We're going to check in with the sign changes of the moon, see what's happening there. Always very important. The third thing, I'm going to examine two charts I think are worth diving deeper into for this week, charts that may define the week. And then finally, I'll pull a cartomancy card, a tarot card, to understand maybe the vibe or the, another layer of symbolism for the week. So that's what you'll get. But yeah, in terms of the introduction, I just want to come back. Mars-Saturn defines everything. Mars is now in Scorpio, squaring Saturn in Aquarius by sign. Mars in superior position. And so Mars can now maybe move Saturn along, move these kind of structures or these boundaries that Saturn has been, dominating our lives with. And I think about just the big changes with the Aquarian moment we're in, starting in March 2020. And now we're fully in Saturn in Aquarius. That will end in March 2023. This 3-year cycle of Saturn in Aquarius should bring, new structure, new long-lasting structures for our lives, whatever part of our charts that Saturn in Aquarius is transiting. And I think a great example of this is when Saturn was in Aquarius in the early 90s, all of Eastern Europe was completely reformulated with new structure. And those structures have basically held and lasted up until this present time, with all kinds of countries joining the EU or joining NATO or getting closer to Europe or moving closer to the Russia sphere. Russia got a new government. All of that happened with a strong Saturn. So it's a great example. I like that just as a metaphor. What's happening in your life? What was sort of destroyed with Saturn and Capricorn and Aquarius, and now what is being reformulated and what new rules are being set? And the reason why I bring that up is that now we have a period where Mars for 6 weeks will be dynamically squaring those changes. And it's like, if you're implementing something new, there's times when it gets more powerfully kind of activated, where there might be problems or shakeups around that implementation. And so this is what we may be experiencing collectively. We're certainly seeing that with a lot of people power out there, but we also may be feeling it in our personal lives. And so I just want to say right off the bat, some people are martial, they're Mars oriented, they have strong Mars and Saturn vibes, they love this dynamic kind of intensity. Others aren't like that. Others are, Mars can be rough. Mars can create real problems in a chart and in a transit. All of this depends on your individual nativity, and so that's why it's good to get readings or understand your own chart, because you can tell is how you may react to Mars. One way to also explore that is just to watch. This is a very powerful Mars, Saturn in a very dynamic square aspect. How are you doing? Is it crazy? Is it difficult? Are you feeling like driven, like Mars and Scorpio can often portend or bring about? Are you feeling ready to move and act? My favorite theme is this idea of never give up. Part of it is these are both fixed signs, Scorpio and Aquarius. And so it's the trenchant, dug in mentality of I will never, ever, ever give up. Where is that in your life? What are you committing to right now? What has clarified around these new structures of the Saturn and Aquarius moment, and with Mars here now? What are you moving your power into, to the extent that you're really committed to it? Something to think about. And so that's just the overarching moment we're in. And I think it's a great introduction. It's a great way to sort of define the week, because that deepens greatly this week. And we'll see it here as we dig here into the transits. Let's do that now. Let's turn to the planetary transits and the sign changes and the aspects between planets this week. It's a pretty cool week, actually. I love this week in the sense that, and I'll just go through this, we start off right on Monday, really early in the morning. So you might be watching this right around the time or after if you're watching these maybe at the beginning of the week, first few days of the week. But we start off with this Mercury-Jupiter trine. Mercury now direct, moving direct in Libra, late degrees of Libra, trining Jupiter, late degrees of Aquarius. The reason why I think this is an important transit, because it's that last perfected transit of the Libra-Aquarius trigon. There's the trigon is the 3, but we've had the trines and air signs from Libra to Aquarius. This is the last one. And so it was pretty cool, all of the Libra season with Mars and Mercury and the Mercury retrograde, and then Jupiter coming back in, and then we had a bunch of planets trining Saturn and Jupiter. This is the last one. So you might want to just pause here. What was your Mercury RX story like? What was your Mercury retrograde story like in terms of the selfhood? That would be for first house Libra risings, but just, are there completions now? Paperwork, issues, business, thinking, thought, Mercury, planning, all of those baskets of topics that Mercury can bring with its retrograde are now completed. And I think it's a nice little touch here to trine Jupiter as we finish really the Mercury retrograde story. I like to think about a retrograde, and we're going to get into this in this video deeply, because we have a Venus retrograde which starts this week. Not the actual retrogradation, but, and this is the point I want to make, I think about retrogrades beginning the moment a planet enters a sign. Because as a sign-based Hellenistic astrologer largely, when a planet enters a sign, that's when things start in terms of the story of that planet's movement through that sign. And so if you're retrograding in a sign, and all of the retrograde, the totality of it is in that same sign, the story will begin upon the ingress. And the story will end upon the ingress into the next sign. And so that's what, that's why I say here, this week on 6 November, so this will be on Saturday, on 5 November, on Friday, Mercury actually does enter Scorpio. And so we do completely finish the Mercury and Libra story. So you congratulate yourself. You did Mercury retrograde 3 times a year. You did it. I know people out there, my clients, my friends, that had whole stories that were really defined by this. So just pat yourself on the back and acknowledge your victory there. And Jupiter will help. I think Jupiter will help. So then we have that on Monday. Then we're moving to Friday in terms of the planets. And the Friday is a big, I'll say it 10 more times. Big day. 11:43 Central Europe in the morning, we get Venus into Capricorn, kicking off a 4-month Venus retrograde story. The story of your Venus in Capricorn will be the story of your Venus retrograde. I'm going to dive into that deeply later. That kicks off on Friday, 11:43 a.m. Central Europe. And then we've got Mercury into Scorpio, same day, about 12 hours later, 11:34 in the evening, 23:34. And that kicks off, that ends like I said, the Mercury retrograde story, but it kicks off Mercury in Scorpio season. And notice here, this is the cool thing, Friday's going to be a heavy shift. No more planets will be in outward day-sect signs. No more air, no more fire signs. The air signs are the thoughts that we move through the world into other people, so it's active, it's a force of acted out there. Fire signs are the passion and the fire, and then we act into the world based on fire. Those are what we might consider day-sect or traditionally masculine signs. We have none of that after Friday. So it's all about this internal process, this deeper kind of struggle, the inside of the selfhood and of the human being and of the human experience. There's this idea of the inside-outside model. If we kind of cleanse the inside, the outside becomes natural how to act in the outer world. It's kind of a spiritual axiom. I like that. I've used that at times. One other way to think about it is like you can look at the room. My room's pretty organized right now, but if you have that disorganized room, sometimes you can say, well, what's going on mentally? And that's another way. I don't want to be sort of pedantic or simplify, but I do think that the inner space, sometimes when we start there, and this week on Friday, we have a big opportunity to go inward. It's going to last for quite a long time. it's a chance to sort of cleanse and clear and clean the inner life, so that then that outer life can reflect those new epiphanies and those new sort of inspirations that come. But yeah, that's the big deal. You know, we've got no planet. Now the moon moves, right? The moon will activate air and fire signs 6 times lunation. But this week we have a Scorpio moon that will have all 7 traditional in these feminine or night sex signs, so-called feminine. So let me just read through here. Mercury trine Jupiter, it kicks off the week. Additional jolt of air, one final air injection. Good for ideas, thoughts, clarifying maybe the things we've learned with the idea set. Friday, Venus and Capricorn, the long relationship review transit begins. I'll dive deeply into that. Venus is relationships. It's things, how we relate to others, the pleasures we get from others, the pleasures that we get from the beauty in life, that, you know, art, others make art. We share and connect over the art that's presented to us. All of that review from a retrograde begins. And then we get Mercury and Scorpio, sextile Venus. That happens on Saturday, 4:58 Central Europe. And I think this is now where we start having Venus and Mercury joining this night sect, so-called feminine sign party. You know, where Venus can bring its powers, Mercury can bring its powers to the Mars-Saturn square. And with that, I think being able to talk and connect about the Mars-Saturn square themes. Talking is Mercury, connection is Venus. Everything I was mentioning in the introduction, the depth and the struggle and the challenge, if you're liking this or disliking it or not liking it, if it's difficult, we can now, I think, connect with others and talk to others about the struggle and challenge with this Venus-Mercury joining here, the sort of night sect. Saturn ruled for Venus, so that incorporates the Saturnine aspect of the Mars-Saturn square. You add Venus to Saturn, and then you get Mercury joining Mars and the Sun in Scorpio. So that's what's going on with the planets this week, and it's very much, I think, going to be maybe full on is the best way to say it. Starting Friday, Saturday and Sunday is full on with this Mars Saturn dynamic square, Scorpio to Aquarius. All right, let's shift. And so if we've got to add this, I've added it back in now, and I had slipped my mind. We've got a big new moon. We've got a big new moon coming up on Thursday before Mercury and Venus change signs. The day before, 12 hours before Venus changes signs, and about the full 24 or almost 23 before Mercury changes signs, we get this new moon in Scorpio. And Scorpio, secret, hidden things, and I've forgotten it. But now here it is, I've added it back in. This is an amazing new moon, because what it does is that it will obviously seed the cycle for the next full lunation, the full lunar month, but also then for the next 2 weeks until that eclipse that comes. But this is the last syzygy that is not an eclipse. And so it tells us we're on the cusp of eclipse season. In terms of everything else I said about Mars, Saturn, and that square deepening, well, you throw eclipse season on top of that, and we're about to enter in some real dynamism. All of the difficulty that we spoke about in the introduction, with eclipses, you get wonky, strange upheaval beginning and ending added to that. So it's going to be very, very intense here. This week is a kind of a final moment here with the sextile between Venus and Mercury that gets embedded into this new moon syzygy. So that happens on Thursday, like I said. I will dive into that quite a lot. I'm not going to talk so much about Venus and Capricorn and the retrograde that begins. I'll just leave it with what I've just said. We'll save that. We'll have a bunch of time to talk about it. Maybe next week we'll do some deep dives into Venus. But just know, Venus and Capricorn, it's time to review relationships. Get serious about relationships and pleasure and connection. Let go. Saturn can be separation and cutting off and isolating. Maybe it's time to be by ourselves and review and heal from this last cycle of Venus. Remember, it was retrograde in Gemini in 2020. Now it's retrograde in Capricorn. How have your relationships been since, I think it was like May 2020-ish until now? You know, did you have relationships? Did you change the relationships that you do have? That's all the stuff that I think will begin this week with Venus's entry into Capricorn. But that new moon is where I want to focus. Okay, let's shift now. Let's get to the moon's transits. We're in the waning cycle of the moon. this moon will be settling and waning this week. And it's good because I think, again, it's a restful cycle that will allow us to prepare for eclipse season. And so in a way, we're waning into this, this moment where the eclipse season will be born, starting with this lunation cycle. As we get into the next full moon in Taurus, the eclipse, the lunar eclipse, we're building now into these eclipses, starting on Thursday this week with the new moon. So the first part of this week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I think there's kind of the last little restful moments here, then we begin waxing into that eclipse. So eclipse season, there's different definitions for when it begins, but I would say one definition might be, the syzygy before the first eclipse. Now you're rising into or waning into the eclipse, so that might be kind of the beginnings in a way. Certainly when the moon enters Taurus, next in a couple of weeks, we'll have the beginnings. I think that's when I really like to say eclipse season is full on, is when the moon enters the sign that it will be eclipsed in, or where the sign where the sun will be eclipsed in. So, but anyhow, this is a waning cycle, good time to rest and get ready for eclipse season. The moon has this lovely Venus transit. I'll be talking all about that. Mars won't be in Libra anymore, so we get this opening up for cardinal signs and for the Libran energy. I think this is going to be wonderful because the moon will perfect a sextile with Venus before leaving. We're bidding adieu to this expansive Jupiter-ruled Venus, the kind of hope and optimism and connection maybe we've had relationally. We're bid adieu to that this week. And we fall then into a very more serious Venus in Capricorn on Friday. But this moon transit, this Libra moon transit, which will be Tuesday, Wednesday, and a little bit on Thursday in Central Europe, basically Tuesday and Wednesday, this is a time for this kind of final little bursts of those energies that I was talking about earlier, the so-called masculine or outward signs, with the moon there, sextiling Venus and Sag. It's kind of this final kind of offering to that more optimistic, outward, hopeful vibe. And then we get the Scorpio moon. When this Scorpio moon hits on Thursday, before the new moon, it's going to be throttled by Mars and Saturn in a malefic enclosure. That's going to be maybe one of the first large triggers of the square, with the moon getting really wrecked there. And then the moon is seated by the sun in the syzygy, the new moon syzygy. That also is maybe the second big trigger. So look for Thursday, Friday, and then like Thursday and Friday, be wary and careful, because could be some greatly difficult, challenged transits. Mars and Saturn squares embedded in the new moon, and then this waning dark moon getting engulfed by that Mars and Saturn energy. I think that the themes of our transit will really become known here, might start really activating here, the themes of our Mars-Saturn square season for this fall 2021. Then the Sagittarius moon front runs the early December solar eclipse. We get that, a young waxing Sagittarius moon here, Saturday and Sunday. And this is where our December eclipse happens. And so I think we're building to that. This is the only time, so the moon will be here in Sag, and then the next trip into Sagittarius will be the eclipse. So maybe set that up. Where's Sagittarius in your chart, and where are you kind of with those themes? We're finishing the whole cycle of eclipses in Sagittarius, Gemini. So this is another chance with this moon this weekend, to work with those themes that have been around for 18 months and sort of settle our Sagittarius vibe. With a nice young growing moon in Sagittarius, safe from Mars, safe from Saturn, right? Now we'll be square to the lunar nodes, but anything that's not in a fixed sign right now is doing okay. Anything that's in a cardinal sign is doing quite well, and we only have the moon here Tuesday and Wednesday in that cardinal Libra, a little bit on Thursday. So okay, let's shift. That's the lunar cycle this week. I want to shift now the two charts I'm going to talk about in chronological order. Let me just reform this. The first chart is going to be my transit of the week, this Libra moon I've just been describing. Check out the chart here. You've got the moon perfecting a sextile in the later degrees. The moon will be in the Egyptian terms of Venus, and then it leaves and it gets close to Mercury, and then leaves in those final 2 degrees. It perfects that sextile to Venus. And at the same time, it's trining Jupiter here. So the chart I have is the moon at the 21st degree of Libra, making that trine to Jupiter, applying to it. But you get a heavy Venus-Jupiter activation with this Libra moon, and Venus is still ruled by Jupiter. So this is a lovely sort of kiss a bit adieu, like I said in the earlier slide. How has Libra season been? How are your relationships? How has the hope and optimism been of Venus and Sagittarius with relationships and with the kind of newness and the hopefulness that can come maybe for the Venus cycle? I've been looking at a lot of charts this week and readings, and Venus, it goes retrograde. And Venus then doesn't leave a Saturn-ruled sign until April. So we have a serious Venus, a Saturn-Venus energy. Old things, serious things, boundaries, coldness, separation, combined with our Venus of pleasure, love, connection. Can be cool. I mean, certainly Capricorn and Aquarian Venuses are. I'm not gonna poo-poo them too much. I mean, there's certainly a deliberateness and a kind of crafty, deliberate boundary orientation that can come that's very useful for relationships and the longevity of relationships. Not every relationship's just a flash in the pan and gone. You want it to last. You want it to settle into those highs and lows and cycles of life. But the point I want to make here is that April 2022, when Venus then gets exalted in Sagittarius, that's a long time to have a Saturn-Venus element in the sky. So enjoy this Libra moon. Here I have a Wednesday chart. I'm trying to get it, the moon on the midheaven. I've got Venus here on the ascendant for where I am in Central Europe. That's going to be a cool vibe to this kind of final kiss off. Like if you're going to go on a journey into the underworld, let's just use that metaphor, and a journey of review and of separation. You want to have a little party. If it's a going away party, you might think about this as the going away party. Sagittarius is certainly a sign that can be like travel within the modern systems. And Jupiter's expansive, and Venus is an expansive, hopeful planet. So this is kind of that going away party before we have to go on that trek, or that, there's the word I'm looking for. This word has been slipped my mind a few times recently, but we have a pilgrimage. The pilgrimage of Venus in Saturn rule signs, going retrograde in Capricorn, then into Aquarius, this deliberately taking on a difficult journey for spiritual purposes is a pilgrimage. We can celebrate and party, and then we have to get serious and have this long pilgrimage until April next year. That April transit, by the way, is going to be awesome. You'll have the modern ruler, Neptune, the traditional ruler, Jupiter, the exaltation ruler, Venus, and then the trigon ruler, Mars, all in Pisces at the same time in the middle of April. Will be a massive activation. So that's coming, but this is the kind of last moment here where we get Sagittarius energy, and we get this sort of happy celebratory Venus. So enjoy it. I have here gratitude for the last several weeks of Venus being in better condition than it was in Scorpio. How has it been to connect? Who have you connected with? Who have you loved? Who have you felt closeness to? All of gratitude for that, I think, is certainly in order here. And we have the optimism of the air signs, with Venus being ruled by Jupiter in an air sign, Mercury still in an air sign, the moon in an air sign, trining Jupiter and Saturn in the air signs. I think about air as the optimism, especially with with Venus being ruled by Jupiter in the air sign and the moon trining and sextiling those planets. I think about this as the optimism planets, Venus and Jupiter, but it's with the mental vision, the ideas, passion, if we want to throw a fire sign, with Sagittarius being a fire sign. I love air signs for envisioning, through writing out what we want, through seeing in our mind's eye the conditions that we hope to manifest or bring about. And then we can think about the whole Aquarian moment, like I was saying in the introduction, this kind of really tear down to build back up in all of our lives. What's your vision for the next 20 years? What are you building? What's your vision for the next few months with this final co-presence of Jupiter and Saturn? This is a great time to do some visioning, and even what you want to let go of with the waning moon. What do you want to purge as you vision a clear path ahead for life? And again, April, March is when the Venus comes out of Capricorn. April, though, is really when we get the powerful Pisces pile up, and that's maybe what we can sort of begin visioning for. We have, after April 2022, in May 2022, all of the planets come into Aries in mid to late May, and that's a heavy duty push forward transit in Aries. So it's almost like we can envision, and then that's right before the next eclipse season, right around that next eclipse season. So we're kind of like this eclipse season we're about to enter, we can envision, maybe even in 6-month cycles, that's a nice syncopation for astrology using the eclipse cycles. But again, air sign, optimism, vision, hope for the future, positive projection, great transit for this with this Libra moon. This is my transit of the week. It's going to be Tuesday, Wednesday, mostly in most places. So enjoy that. No more Mars in Libra. That's the big thing. So we get this really safe, powerful moon sextiling its ruler in the late degrees. Powerful, and that ruler is Venus, the benefic planet. So very, very powerful Libra moon. All right, next I want to shift to the new moon. This will be Thursday. This is the new moon chart. First thing I just want to say out of the bat, this will be conjoined Alphecca, the fixed star Alphecca, the fixed star in the crown of Corona Borealis. Someone was asking me on Twitter, and they were sad I wasn't breaking down fixed stars in the last couple of talks. I'm going to do it when I can. This one is it's very, very close. It's within like 10 degree minutes. When they're obvious and close, I will try to add them, but I'm trying to just like, get a little bit more efficient with these talks. And so the fixed stars may not be included sometimes. I'm sorry for that if you enjoyed that. But here this week we do have it. The thing about Alphecca, Corona Borealis, the crown, it's associated with Mercury and Venus by Ptolemy and creativity. This is a very creative placement in terms of this fixed star. And the reason why I think it's a great theme for this syzygy, this new moon, is that look at the syzygy, ruled by Mars, with Mars. So it's ruled by Mars, by domicile, and with Mars. That's the force and power of even violence, deeply held beliefs that then move into the world. Not always easy, right? Mars can be, someone was saying on Twitter, what about non-violent delineations for Mars and keywords? Yeah, I mean, force and power and choice and action doesn't always have to be violent in a literal sense, but I think there's a metaphorical violence that's always present with Mars because it's the movement out of a moment. And so you're destroying the stasis of the present moment by choosing to act. So there's this kind of metaphorical turning on its head of what we're leaving when we use Mars and deploy Mars. It doesn't always have to be literally blood or breaking of the bones or something like that, but it can be, and so this syzygy is ruled by this powerful Mars with Mars, and then it squares Saturn, and Saturn is again this squared, so it's 5 degrees from this Saturn roughly, and it's 9 degrees from Mars. It's heavy duty Mars Saturn energy with this syzygy. Seeds the whole next 2 weeks. I think we're about to enter into some real tough stuff. I'm seeing all kinds of news stories about protests. I'm seeing images of like masses of people in front of government buildings and stuff. I think we're about to see a lot of collective turmoil. And then eclipses come, this lunar eclipse conjoined Algol. I'm praying for everybody out there. I'm praying for you, praying for myself, all of us, that we can just get through this as a collective. Love, heal, accept, nurture, and just try to get through this tough time. I think by Jupiter into Pisces will be a real finally this has been over, but we're sort of running a gauntlet now to finish 2021. But the other thing I want to point out is it's in the Egyptian terms here of Mercury. So we get Mercury as a ruler, and Mercury is in this chart making a sextile. It's applying to perfect this sextile to Venus. Now this doesn't perfect until they change signs, but it's still this sign-based easy flow between Mercury and Venus. And I love this idea that the fixed star Alphecca portends creativity. Mercury and Venus combinations are all creativity, or not all, but very much can be about creativity. The beauty and then the technical side, when you combine that, making beauty through technique, you get all kinds of artistic production. And this is in the final moments in these so-called masculine signs of maybe doing a creative act. So I like this and maybe getting into this party I was speaking of earlier, this kind of final signing off to Venus and Sag. We can maybe do something creative, maybe paint or write or sing as we kind of celebrate the times we've had with the Libra, Mercury retrograde completion, and Venus in Sagittarius completion this week. So that's the optimistic side of the syzygy, but this is seeded in the next 2 weeks, this kind of celebration. So as things get difficult with the Mars-Saturn square, how will you create through that? How will you use creativity to transmute and transcend, whether the depths of challenge or whether the force of action you're embodying? Get creative is basically a big theme, maybe a short 2-word theme. Get creative to deal with struggle as the theme of this syzygy, this new moon. So enjoy it. That comes in on Thursday. All right, that is the weekly astrology. That is what I want to discuss this week. Let's move in now to pulling one card. Let's see what we can pull here. All right, just going to get my slide prepared and then we'll pull it. So the card is all right, so let's see what this is going to be here. Love doing the card pulls. I mean, the tarot, the astrology is like the technical weather. The tarot is like the forcing us in to look at something. Sometimes the astrology doesn't make evident. So they're so cool when we can work together with them. This is going to be the 9 or the 8 of clubs, motion. This is that decan, that first decan in Sagittarius, the Mercury ruled decan. I see this card and I see Mercury in Sag, Mercury being ruled by Jupiter. Motion, this card just on its own implies fast movement. Maybe things are going to start moving really fast, just like what I was saying about the world and in your life. As we deepen into this Mars-Saturn square dynamic this week, Mercury and Venus entering in Saturn and Mars-ruled signs and joining that dynamic, adding their powers into that dynamic. I think things are going to start happening quickly. That's what this card tells me right away. I will say that Mercury in Sagittarius, it's just coming to mind everything we just talked about with Venus in Sagittarius sextiling Mercury from Libra, that final party of these two planets together. So enjoy that this week and enjoy their sextile when they meet on Saturday. You know, thinking about the creativity and the movement of creativity. Maybe this is asking us to think about like the type of creativity where we're just in inspiration, like the phase where we're generating the material that then we may come back and refine. This is more of the passion or inspiration stage of the creative process. Free writing, free journaling. Maybe you think about that free sketching, and then maybe later that will be turned into something more potent in terms of a work of art. But just opening up that document and letting it flow. And that's what I see this card as, a creative strategy to transmute and purge and deal with the Mars-Saturn dynamism that we're entering into. So that is the weekly astrology. That is the weekly tarot. This is S.J. Anderson. Thank you for being here. Thank you for coming to my channel. You can support me by liking and subscribing the video. You can always go to my website, sjanderson144.com, and schedule an astrology reading, a tarot reading, or you can support my Patreon. Helps keep the videos going. Have an awesome day. Talk soon.